I'm Lila Rose. I'm 34, and my occupation is the president of Live Action, and I'm a writer and a speaker, and a mom.
Okay. What is Live Action, by the way?
We're a human rights organization defending children in the womb, mothers, fathers, and families.
So based.
What's been healing?
My slut phase.
What have you healed?
So for me, I've been raised in the indoctrination that my job as a woman is to please my male partner, my husband. And as a woman, I was not given pleasure because it didn't have to be reciprocal. Getting divorced and discovering my sexuality, I learned my pleasure is just as important of a right. And so now I get to have that with different people, find out what I like, what I don't like, have different experiences to find out what turns me on, what turns me off. And that's healing, to know yourself and to learn yourself and to feel good with your pleasure and not limit it because of what someone else thinks you should do with it.
Nick, was that presented as Christianity to you, that the man just gets the pleasure and the woman doesn't get any pleasure? Was that
I think it was more, it was more caught than taught. I think they would say it's equal, but in practice, it was my job as a woman to support the man and whatever he wants. And so you just learn this messaging of, well, what I want isn't as important. Though if I confronted them, they say, no, you're just as important, but not in practice.
But you didn't experience that in your marriage, it sounds like.
Not the way I think it should have been. Correct.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
because
me too.
I think an authentically Christian marriage, the man gives his life for the woman, and absolutely equal sexual pleasure is very important. So I'm sorry that you didn't experience that in your marriage.
Yeah.
I might have multiple family.
Oh.
You never know. I might like family more than you. So much I have 5.
Do you think that's a good thing, to have multiple families?
I think it's good if there's one dad and there's not a bunch of step parents involved, and the dad can be the hero, and those 5 families live a 10x better life than they would have otherwise. Yes, ma'am, I do.
But you don't think that it will be ultimately an opportunity for jealousy or disharmony amongst
women? Are always
going
to be jealous. What's changed
about
that? Women have been jealous all the way through time. So
I'm not jealous in my marriage.
I don't care about your marriage. I'm talking about mine. What my life is going to be. So I don't answer to you. So that's my answer. I'm going to run my situation exactly how I want to. And generally, when I do that, that's when I have the most happiness, let's say, in my life. So that's all.
And you would want that for your daughters?
Yeah. I live my life unapologetically on my terms. So if my daughters that are overly spoiled and educated in every way and have friends all over the world and world traveled in the best schools in the world, if they have a problem with me at the end of the day, then they can kick rocks too. I'm not going to simp for my daughters. I'll love them fully. But if they grow up and turn into a person that doesn't want to get in line with me, or look, here's my goal as a parent: teach my children how the world works, give them the skills so they can live on their own terms, and give them choice. If they choose not to make me part of their life after I've given them those things, I've still succeeded as a father.
But I guess I'm asking if you're comfortable answering, obviously, but are you wanting to be a role model for your kids? Is that part of
1,000%. A father should show up in every way for his children. I think I'll be better than most fathers, regardless of how many children I have. I might have 100.
But you think part of being a role model, it's okay for your kids not to know even your relationship status with their own mom?
They will know the relationship status with me and their mother.
But you have other relationships with other women, too.
What does that have to do with anything?
But I'm just wondering if you think
I haven't even said that. I'm just saying, like, if I want to, I will.
But you don't think that's a problem for your daughter to know that about their dad? That he has multiple mistresses?
That's up to my daughter, man. You know.
But do you want your daughter to have a guy like that long term?
If he takes care of her in every way and she has a much better life because of it, yeah.
Can I ask you one more question?
Fire away, honey.
Okay. If you have only one place in your heart for one woman, or you want to have one woman in your heart, I think you said, why don't you just commit to one and choose to be faithful to her?
I'm just not wired that way. I spent my whole 20s trying to fix myself. I thought something was wrong with me.
You're a man of self-control. You work out, you do business.
Yeah.
You can possess your own power and direct it the way you want to direct it.
It's just not how I am. It's not how I am.
You think that might be a limited mindset?
I think it's none of your business, but I don't want you to think I'm triggered by you. I'm not.
Okay.
I saw somebody say that, and I think that's interesting. I think you're annoying, but I'm not triggered. You know what I'm saying? No, you are. You're annoying in like this goody two-shoes type way, and that's fine. I'm going to live my life on my terms, unapologetically, like truly. So you can ask me this 85 different ways. At the end of the day, I'm going to walk out of here the same man.
There was actually a study done where 70% of men have cheated on their wives at one point or another.
This was in part by design, because the sexual revolution happened right in the 60s and the 70s, and there was this sexologist named Alfred Kinsey.
Let's go.
I don't know if anyone has heard of him, but he's kind of known as the godfather or the grandfather of sexology today. And so his ideology has really influenced a lot of sex ed today and a lot of behavior today. And so what he did, he wanted to prove that everybody was sexually deviant, was the term at the time, sexually deviant. They weren't in monogamous relationships, or if they were, they'd lie, and they were in swinger culture and other kinds of relationships. And he wanted to mainstream this idea because he wanted to break down the natural family, single mother, single father, together, married together, and with children. And so what he ended up doing is he created social data, research data, and he would actually survey prison populations for their sexual experiences, and he would use that and claim that this was representative of the entire population. So actually, he would ask, interview convicts or have people interview convicts and who were involved in all kinds of dark stuff, and they would share, we've been obviously in bestiality, rape, or we've been involved in having many different partners. And then he said, this is representative of, so 70% or 80% of Americans, he claimed, are involved in swinger culture or polyamory behind closed doors. But he was lying, is the thing. But
so you're telling me that stat she just referenced is total BS?
I don't know exactly where you got that stat, but I think it might be a Keynesian stat because a lot of his statistics kind of created the groundswell for that mentality. And then the problem is it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So if everybody thinks, oh, it's normal to have sex with a ton of different people, it's normal to not be monogamous, it's actually good to not be monogamous, right? That's the message of society tells you. Porn is good, sleeping around is good, sex is not a big deal. Then it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because more and more people get sexualized and get, start down that path. And unfortunately in our society too, a lot of young girls, I heard what you shared, Kirsten, right? Mm-hmm. It was horrible. Like with that guy, it's ridiculous, right? But he was probably watching porn, right? So he's being trained by his pornography to treat you like an object. He didn't even talk to you about it. He just did this gross thing to you and you're like, what the heck? You walk out, right? But he was trained by porn to do that. That's not normal. Like a little boy doesn't grow up and become that naturally as a man. He's trained to think and become deviant.
Like, do what you want. Like, that's the thing. Like, no one's being harmed here. No one's being coerced. No one's being manipulated. It's like, I desire this. Do you desire this? Yes. Great. We're all on the same page.
Here's a question. Do you think all desires should be acted on? All sexual desires?
Nope. And so that's a common accusation. That's like, oh, well, then you're gonna bestiality is always thrown in there, which is so ridiculous.
I think you said something really interesting, Nick. You were talking about like sexual desires and the desire to act out on our different sexual desires. And I think there's this mentality in our culture today that if someone has a sexual desire, then that is their identity. That can become their identity if they have enough of a sexual desire in one direction. That's their identity. And so. But I don't think that's true. I don't think we're defined by our desires. I think we're defined by what we choose.
I love pegging, and I do not identify as a pegger. It's like, I love threesomes, and I don't identify as a threesome. It's like, I'm Nicole Mitchell, a woman who's alive and in tune with what she wants and lets herself have it with consenting adults, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I disagree.
I have all kinds of experiences, but it doesn't mean I have to identify as each of those things. I love Oreos. I'm not an Oreo.
This is something I'm super passionate about because I think there's been a version of maybe fundamentalist Christianity that people have experienced that they felt really hurt by, and so they've kind of lashed out against it and rejected it. And I see this a lot, actually. But the reality is when, I was raised Protestant, went through this kind of semi-agnostic phase, kind of like you went through, and then I ended up Catholic after doing a ton of study and a ton of research and just being convinced by the beauty of it. And it was learning about how men and women are equal dignity, they're equal partners, learning about sex, what God's design is, which is a beautiful one, that it is about pleasure. It absolutely is about pleasure. And pleasure, it's not dirty or shameful, but it's also about procreation and the ability to bring life into the world. And it's designed to be within marriage where you're in a lifelong public commitment to someone that you're going to give yourself 110% to. And that's how you build a beautiful family of love and respect, and your children are secure in your love that you have with your spouse. And so, I don't know all of your experiences, obviously, and everyone has had different experiences, but the reality is the social data proves that monogamous, lifelong marriages make people happiest, they have the most sex and the best sex, and kids are healthier that way. And so that's why I know you're excited about that vision, Chase, and that's why we want to share that vision, not just because of some fundamentalist thing, but because it actually makes people happier and healthier in the long run.
Yep.
I have a question.
Let 'em roll.
Do you think marriage should be public?
What do you mean?
Do you think that when you commit your life to someone and you're going to build a family with them, do you think that should be done in community, so public?
I think that's up to the people that do it. I don't think there's a right way to do it at all. So that's up to you.
So you think like for children, they don't have the right to know whether or not their parents are married and be able to feel that when they go out into society. And share that.
I think that if your kids ask, you should tell them the truth 100%. There's no lie or nothing I would ever keep from a child of mine.
Meaning the truth about, no, we're not married. I have other people I'm sleeping with.
Whatever they ask me, I would answer. Yeah.
I think as somebody that was raised by a single mom, like those things, they don't matter as much to your child as you think that they may. I mean, it did have an effect on my relationships growing up, but it's also something like you can learn from that experience through your parents, you know? Like you can, as long as you have open communication with your child. And I don't have any children, but I have younger siblings, and I'm openly communicative with all of my family members.
I think what's most important when it comes to kids is their love in the house. Do they see love between their parents? Mm-hmm. Not are they living the way of making people that go to church happy? Mm-hmm. It's a very downward deflecting question you're asking me, and I understand why you're doing it. However, I'll put love first in front of marriage every day of the week, because people get married in America every weekend, putting the marriage and the Facebook pictures before the actual love. Mm-hmm. So I'll take the love over all the bullshit.
I think that's probably true. There's a lot of...
It's definitely true.
There's a lot of hypocrisy out there, for sure.
There's a lot of hypocrisy in Christianity as well.
Yeah.
Like Bible thumping people that want to beat you up with their views and ask silly questions about things that don't matter. Like, is your kid going to be upset that you have other women? All I'm worried about is being a good fucking father and a provider and giving them a life full of love. And if I can do that, I've been quite successful. In fact, I'd say more successful than most Christians.
So my understanding of love...
Shots fired.
My understanding of love is that it is totally wanting the best for the other person, and that it's committed, and that it's sacrificial, and that it's exclusive, it's faithful. And fidelity, I think, is a really important part of love. And if you don't have fidelity in love, then you don't have the security and the opportunity for full vulnerability.
Can I throw a hypothetical at you?
Yeah, please do.
And this is a hypothetical, please don't get offended. But if your husband were to do something that was not okay with you whatsoever, to the point where you did not any longer want to be with him, whether that's cheating or something else that's just a no for you, would you leave them? Would stay. Would you leave them to just please your children and to keep your family together? Is that like you're willing to risk your own happiness and well-being, or even safety, if it was something that was that extreme?
Are you talking about abuse?
I'm using a hypothetical. Okay. Whatever it is that would be like a straight, like, I need to leave this person. Would you stay with them just for the convenience and also the toxicity that it could bring into your household, inflicting your children, you know?
So my position is, and it's the position of the Catholic Church as well, which is that if you're in a situation in a marriage that's abusive, right, it's causing harm to you or your children, then you definitely should create separation. You should leave. You can actually get a legal divorce if you need to separate your assets. But the position of the church and my belief is that marriage is forever, until death do us part. Until death do us part. So you can marry someone and they become a screwball. You know, they totally mess up. They do bad things, and you should separate yourself from them for your protection or your kids' protection. But you then don't go on and just remarry and try to live another life. Now, there's something in the case if you were lied to. So there's something called annulment, which some people say, oh, that's Catholic divorce. It's actually not. Annulment is when it's as if the marriage never happened, because people were lying typically when they go into the marriage. So like typically abusers don't just start abusing after marriage, they're abusing before marriage too, or they're lying. So if they're lying to you in a serious way and you go into a marriage, you weren't able to freely choose that marriage. And so afterwards you can request an annulment from the church and be like, hey, I don't think I was even married because I didn't freely choose this. I didn't know this guy was a liar and, you know, addicted to pornography and abuse and all these things. And so in that case you could nullify the marriage and then be free to actually get married.
I want to say something just to be completely fair to you. I think what you have in your marriage is absolutely beautiful. No problem with it at all. I think that if you two are happy and like living together in the Lord, and like you see a future that goes past this life to heaven, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. No issue at all. Well, and you should be commended for doing it, you know, properly.
Well, but
not properly in regards to your religion. I don't mean to cut you off, but properly in regards to like what you are setting out to do with him. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Well, we're definitely imperfect people figuring it out, right? And that's what part of marriage is becoming better together. You know, in that total commitment to each other. But the thing is, like, I'm passionate about not just wanting it for myself, right? Like, I'm very grateful to be married. It has rooted my life. It has anchored my life. It has changed my life. But I don't want to just keep that to myself and be like, oh, this is just my personal thing over here. I want other people to have the opportunity for that too.
What do you think it takes for women to get in a position to find a husband that will commit to them fully and give their life to them? What do you think that takes?
Well, I think the first step is working on yourself and your own development as a woman, becoming the best that you can be, and then having good standards for the man that you're going to be with. Like, to be perfectly honest with you, I would not ever date a guy who I thought would be unfaithful to me. Not even date him. Never. If I found out my person I was dating is sleeping with other women or sleeping with anyone, honestly, because we didn't have sex before marriage, I'd be like, no, I'm not interested in that.
But I asked you what you think a woman needs to do.
I think the woman needs to become the best she can be. She needs to grow psychologically, be healthy. If she needs to heal from trauma from her childhood, a lot of us have baggage. I had baggage. Go get the therapy that you need. Really understand.
Do you not believe that therapy is in the church and Christianity?
Do I not believe what?
Do you not believe it's everything that you need is at church? You can't just find that in the Word?
Well, the beauty of Catholicism is it's very much focused on the whole person, right? So it's not like we're just spiritual beings, right? We're also bodies with desires, with traumas, with experiences. And so the psychological world and psychological health is an important part of bodily health, and it connects to your spiritual health. So therapy is great. Obviously we totally promote therapy for those that need it. Mental health is really important. So just because you're doing the right thing spiritually doesn't mean you're necessarily mentally healthy. You may need to get mental health support too. I think this is actually something a lot of people who are really spiritual fall into. They think, oh, if I'm just pray enough, I can make my depression go away, right? And yes, sometimes God does just heal depression like that, but a lot of the time God uses natural means like a good therapist, a good psychiatrist to help somebody through that.
Or a good threesome.
Oh.
Haram!
I would say that that's going to decline someone's mental health in the end, would be my
Maybe for some people, but that's, again, like, it's so unique to the person. And I think, so you're talking about like spiritual, you're talking about bodily, mental, we're also sexual. And I think
absolutely are.
That's the part, and like we have to find a way to healthfully channel that desire. And for you, that's through monogamous marriage. For me, that's through non-monogamy, and trusting like what is right for me is right for me, and what is right for you. And back to your question too about, what if all society was like you? But it's not. It's a spectrum. We have people all the way on the one extreme of monogamy. We have other people on the other extreme to polyamory. And like we're all somewhere across there. And I think there's beauty in all of it, depending on who you are and what's good for you. And so I don't think it has to be one or the other.
But Nick, you're 3 years in, right? You're 3 years in living this way. So look at 90 years. Look at 80 years. I don't know how long.
I'm thinking the same thing.
I don't know how old you want to live to.
200.
But I think your drive, whether it's your sexual drive or your drive for whatever you're aiming at, right? Wealth or friendship, you're lonely, whatever it is, it's powerful, right? And it can be channeled. And so, to what you were saying earlier, Justin, is like you can channel these things towards the end that you choose. And so I think the big question is, what is the end that we're going to choose that when we're 80 years old or 90 years old on our deathbed, we're like, are we going to be surrounded by that lifelong partner, that spouse that we were faithful to our whole life, and our kids who grew up in that intact home? Or are we going to be alone? Or are we going to be, what kind of life are we aiming towards?
If I desire to have many partners over the rest of my life, I believe I can have that. I truly believe we get to have the desires of our heart.
I think the human condition is that things aren't always amazing, right? We have bad days, we get sick, terrible accidents can happen. And so that's where the power of love comes in, a love that doesn't leave, a love that isn't based on feelings or desire, but a love that's based on choice. And I think deep down, we're all wired for that. Even men that like you were saying, Justin, like, I want to be with multiple women and everything. I think deep down we want a love that stays, a love that lasts. And it is possible for everyone, every single person at this table. I guarantee you 1,000% it is possible for you.
Not for asexual people.
Yeah, but I would argue that, like, who are you to tell me that I'm not going to be happy because I don't choose your path?
Yes.
I don't think I said that.
Pretty much, you reframed it in that way. So who are you to say that?
I will say.
Or do you think I'm going to be less happy than you?
I think that if you live your life, and you said you're not sharing whether or not you're doing this, so we're all talking in hypothetical, right. So I don't know exactly how you're living, right? You didn't share that. But if hypothetically you live your life where you are starting multiple families with multiple women.
What if I have one family and 50 girlfriends?
I think in the end it will bring great unhappiness to your family, to your children, to the mother of your children, and to you.
But there's a difference between that versus somebody who is actually striving to live by the tenets of the Word of God, and who is loving their wife as he loves himself, and who is sacrificing for her, and who treats her like gently and with compassion. And if the wife is doing the same to her husband, and she's, you know, submitting to her husband, and she's loving him effectively, and she follows his leadership, and he is a good leader, you're going to have totally different marital outcomes with couples like that, right?
Well, and it's really interesting because when they do studies about sexual satisfaction for women, they find that women who are married in monogamous, faithful marriages, and they are going to church regularly, like weekly, share that they have the highest sexual satisfaction.
And super low divorce rates.
That is so
super
made
low
up.
divorce
And
rates.
super low
There's so
divorce
much
rates.
data out there that women get more orgasms and more pleasure from women than they do to men.
But that's because that man is probably not a good lover to them. That's
Yeah,
what
that's
about.
the majority of the situation.
But that's
So if
because
they're
but the man needs to learn to see. That's the beauty of a lifelong marriage. It's like you learn to love each other, not just like in doing chores for each other or doing fun things together, but in how you have sex. You learn to really love each other.
Like,
so
by
what do you do if
communicating.
one
Lifelong
partner?
marriage.
What do you do if one partner has a high libido and one partner has a low libido?
Well, you work through that. You
so
work through
one
that
has to
together.
starve sexually, and one
No, you
feels
sac-
guilty
you
for
actually
not.
sacrifice.
Are you
There's
speaking
sacrifice
to,
involved.
like, was that the case in your marriage?
No, but I just know examples where men like either gender. One gender's like, I have no drive, so I can't.
Well, if a guy,
and there-
I'll answer that. If a guy has no drive and the woman has a high drive, he should go get his testosterone levels checked, right? Because a guy
I was
who's
just gonna say it's
a
probably
guy
a
who's
health
healthy,
condition
a guy
happening
who's
right there.
healthy, he's gonna want sex, you know. But if he has no
or he's
sexual
super
drive,
stressed out,
Or-
or he's not eating well, he's not
or
sleeping.
even
Yeah.
vice versa. Like if the woman isn't having the same sex drive, like that's, I don't know. I mean,
I think what it comes down
then is there something wrong with the woman?
I think
she
what it
might
comes
not
down
be
to
as emotionally into the
Into- yeah.
relationship if she's not
Yeah.
doesn't have that high sex drive, because when with my ex, he had a really high sex drive and I don't. I really don't care for sex, but with him, I was down to do whatever
Because
he
you
wanted
loved him.
every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, however many times.
And that's the design of monogamous love and marriage, is that you learn to love each other. And this idea of like sexual incompatibility, I think, is a total myth. I think it's a lie, and people believe it, and so they have sex before marriage. But people who have sex before marriage and sleep together or cohabitate actually have worse outcomes once married. They're more likely to divorce. Not a lot of people know that. That's what the social data says. But that's because when you're in it for life and you're in it to really love this person, be committed and learn them and do whatever you can for them, you learn pleasure with them. You learn how to love not just sex with them, but your entire life with them, and you work at it together.
I think
That's
it's
cute.
because when you're like monogamous, like when you're with someone longer, like just them, you learn to communicate like what you like and dislike in the bedroom, like
So
your
what do I say
pleasures.
if I like non-monogamy?
No, I'm saying like
You know what I mean?
no, but like I'm saying
like
like
group?
when you're with.
It's like, I love you and I want group sex.
Well, I think if
Let's
you
talk
want
that
to,
through.
if you want to cheat on somebody and you're married to them, I think you make the decision not to.
Yeah, and that's where I have different beliefs from religion, which is about sacrifice. I believe in honoring desires, and like, again,
do
not
too.
saying
I think
go out on a whim and just do whatever, but I think that actually is true love. Can you love me in my fullness? And in my fullness, I'm non-monogamous. In my fullness, I want to have sex with other people. In my fullness, I'm very sexual. If that's too much for you, I can't be with you, and I bless and release you.
See, I think you're making an identity out of your desires, but your identity
think
is
you are
not just how
too.
what you desire.
You're making your identity out of your desires. Just because mine are sexual, you're making that about me, but you make an identity out of your desires for monogamy, for marriage, for
So-
procreation. That's your identity.
I see
We
what
all
you're-
make our identities around our desires. It's not just for
I
sexually awake
think
people.
there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. The question is, what desire? Will you be defined by your sexual impulse and urge, or will you be defined by something much bigger, a
or are you
transcendental
controlled,
like love?
or is your identity based on controlling your desire?
I
It's
think
like, to me, I think
it's
that's
about,
actually harmful.
It's about channeling it. It's about channeling
That's
it.
what I do. I channel it to all the people I love.
Just
STI rates have just spiked more and more, that people think hookup culture is okay, and having sex before marriage or having sex with multiple people is okay. So I don't know, it's really sad actually, because we could solve that with deciding not to just have sex with multiple people.
But
I mean,
he just
that- there
said a
is
woman had
solution
sex
to it.
one time and she got STI. So there's no 100%
But she had-
full proof that you cannot get an STI.
It's
and again,
possible.
Yeah, but come
But
on,
you can
come
lower-
on.
you can lower
you
the
can get it having
possibility.
sex.
when I finally got clear on who do I want to be as a person, as a woman, as a partner, as a mother, my happiness went through the roof.
I think if everybody lived in a way where they were honoring the fullness of who they are, we would have a disease-ridden society.
Well, but I think that, the fullness
amazing.
of who we are changes depending on our feelings, our experiences, and even our traumas. And so I think that can be very misleading. Like, what does it mean? You mentioned soulful desire versus like a surface desire. And I think that how do you discern between the two? And the reality is our hearts can mislead us.
My
You know,
heart
Yes,
we
they
can be
can.
misled.
And it's
Yes, they
the way you
can.
discern
And
is
that's
like
why moral
each
realities
person.
matter.
No,
Because
I think each
if we
person
just
has to
make up all of
discern
our
for themselves.
If we just make up all of our morality all the time, we're inevitably going to hurt other people.
What
and
if
we're gonna
I
hurt
make my
ourselves.
non-monogamy the societal rule? You have to
You
be
have a
non-monogamous.
chaotic and broken society. And a lot of miserable
Civilization
children.
would collapse.
I love it. That's how we feel about monogamy. When you try to force your values on someone else, people will cheat, people
No,
will lie,
let me
people feel
just
trapped.
be clear. I don't think Chase would want to force anybody to get married. Absolutely
No,
not.
absolutely
100%. Marriage should be freely chosen. So no one should be forced to be monogamous in that sense. But I do think we have a responsibility, and that involves the choices we make with whether or not we have sex. And that's a choice that we make. We're not doomed to have sex or not. We can choose, no, I'm not going to have sex because I know that there's consequences that can result from that.
Like really good consequences, like
Or
like
really-
STIs
or really bad
or
consequences.
pregnancy that you're not expecting.
orgasms.
Exactly.
Like there's so much good. We only focus on the bad because we're so
Pregnancies
afraid
that
of
you're not
pleasure.
expecting, fatherless
I mean,
homes,
yeah, there's
broken families.
Vasectomy.
There are
Come on, there's
2,500
all
babies
kinds of
killed
things.
every day in this country because they were unwanted, because people had sex that weren't ready to be parents with people they didn't want to actually be with.
People have
the rest
used
of their lives.
contraception and it's failed. It's not because they
That's
weren't.
the point.
So they have to have
Exactly.
options. To, if they don't want the baby, they do everything in their power to not have to have it. If that's their choice.
So why should children have to die because adults just want to live
They're
out
just
sexual
cells
desires?
before they're born as a baby.
You're just cells right now.
Okay. Cool.
What,
But you have a right to live, and the child has a right to live in the womb.
Sure.
do you guys want to continue that discussion?
No, it's old. It's done. No,
Well,
I'm happy to.
not interested.
If people choose to have consensual sex, nobody's forcing the birth of that child. They made the choice to have consensual sex, and
Sex and procreation are
then the
two
birth
different
happens.
things.
What'd you say?
Sex and procreation are two different things.
Right, but when somebody
That's
has
not right,
sex,
actually.
when
Sex
somebody
can bring life into the world.
exactly when somebody has sex, they are risking procreation. So the two are obviously intertwined.
By the way, I think the whole framing is so sad. Like, I know you're saying that, Chase, because it's like that's the way people think today is, oh, I'm going to have sex and risk procreation. When creating a new human life is so amazing.
Not
and
if you don't have
beautiful.
resources, not if you don't have
beautiful,
money,
but
not
Lila,
if you don't
the
have
thing
support.
is people don't think about the fact that they're risking procreation.
I know.
Which is why we're in the situation we're in.
That's true, but also, what if people chose not to have sex until they were in a relationship publicly with someone they were committed to for life and prepared to have children that might come from that
We'd have
sex?
a lot less
Our
murdered
society
babies,
would
that's
be
I wouldn't have a
amazing. It would
job.
be much.
I would not
much
have a
to-
job. I would not have a job.
You're a talented woman. You would find another job for
Oh,
sure.
I have many different forms of revenue, but I would not have my favorite one.
Yes.
I think you're better than the job that your favorite job.
I mean, I don't think that there's a sense of, oh, I'm better or worse if I do or don't do what I'm comfortable doing with my own body.
Yes.
I just think you deserve
Amen.
more than men.
I
looking
think
at you
that
on the
I
internet.
deserve the world, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get it.
I think
We'll
telling
close it.
women that it was empowering to sell their bodies online for $10 a month is one of the most hilarious scams
Okay,
of all
that's,
time. It's
that's
ridiculous.
totally
There's
the,
no
it's
good role
back to
models
the,
for women
It's back to
nowadays.
the Alfred Kinsey guy, and Hugh Hefner said that he wanted to be the pamphleteer of the sexual revolution. Like, he wanted to be the one to trick women into being Playboy bunnies and think they're empowered by being Playboy bunnies, when really he had the last laugh.
Yeah.
And I think that, we as women deserve better, and I think deep down men want to be better. Perhaps the women at this table haven't been hurt by a man cheating on them, or a boyfriend or something cheating on them and looking at porn or cheating with another person, but I know people that have been hurt, and probably we know people who have been hurt.
I have
been.
one of
You
them.
have been.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So
And that's the
so
point.
what's the golden rule, right? Do unto others how you'd want them to do to you, right? And so I think that's really, you mentioned a crisis of masculinity. I think there's a crisis of femininity too, because we set the standard as women, right? Like, that's part of our role in society, of saying, like, we're gonna have boundaries, we're gonna have standards for the men, and that they need to rise to the occasion for us.
Free fall.
So I dated all through my 20s, and I have a lot of friends who, different experiences, but the bottom line, I think, would be this, is that have boundaries about the kind, and standards about the kind of guy that you'll even date. And obviously when you're first getting to know them, you don't know, but once they start coming on to you sexually, pushing your boundaries, just say, okay, I'm done, and move on to the next. Maybe open yourself up to another opportunity for somebody that is more noble, that respects you more, respects themselves more, because that's what you're worth. That's what your dignity is. You have dignity, and you deserve a guy who's going to fight for you and is going to have high virtue, and you're going to continue to grow your own virtue. So that's
Amen.
what I would say. Don't waste
you
too
can
much
add
time
that.
with those losers.
Amen.
In the same, on the opposite side of the spectrum, as a single girl that does OF, guys completely discredit me the second they find out what I do, and I
Based.
I know I'm not saying, I'm not in the point in my life where I'm like, oh yeah, I need a boyfriend. I'm just saying, like, it can be just as difficult on the other opposite side of the spectrum. So don't put yourself down or compare yourself, because if you compare yourself to other people, then it takes the gratification out of your own success, your own happiness. It's not worth
But
it.
Love
Al,
that.
you're very smart, I can tell. And do you want to be a role model for other people ultimately? Is that something that you'd like to be?
Of course, and I believe that I can do both, and it not be a degrading, like, me not, I'm not degrading myself by I'm gonna get, women are gonna
Putting
be
your
sexual.
body naked on the
give me
internet.
that
Do you think
rapper.
that- do you
Give me the
think that-
rapper.
Do you
Give me the
think
rap.
that
Here,
you
give it to
we
me.
should have young girls
Give it.
looking up to?
No,
Like, do you think the
you're
dream
making
of
too
a
much
young
noise. Give it.
Do you think that the dream of a young
Give
girl
me the
should
rapper.
be?
Yep. Give me the
Hey
gun.
Brian, let me ask the
Give me
question,
gun.
okay? Do you
Yeah,
think
but she's,
that?
bro,
Alright.
she's like making noise with
All
this
right, we're
rapper.
done. Elle, do you think that the dream of a young girl should be to be an OnlyFans?
I think that a young woman should have a choice to do what she wants with her body, and that it shouldn't be frowned upon to do whatever means necessary to be independent. And that's my opinion, and you don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to agree with the way that I make my money, and you reserve that right for yourself, and I respect that opinion. I do. I think it's powerful that you're allowed to have that opinion, but I don't think that I need to agree to it or co-sign it.
But I think we all just had this conversation. Chase was talking about it, asking questions. I think we were kind of all mostly agreeing, maybe not every single person, but most of us were agreeing that, you know, porn has really hurt society at large. And we wouldn't want to be in a relationship with a man who looked at porn. A lot of men on OnlyFans are married men who are looking at the porn, and their wife is, you know, they're being cheated on basically. So, I mean, that role model that you want to be.
All right,
Then it's
Ladies,
men's job to
ladies.
step up and take the market away. It's back to what I said earlier. Men have always led the world. Why are we going to act like it's women's fault now? If there was no platform for her to make this kind of money on, she wouldn't be doing it. If
I
men
think it's
were
a good
better,
point.
she would be with a different man. It is men's job to take this responsibility and stop subscribing to it. Not the girl's fault, because the girl has no man to get under and get behind and believe in, no man to marry, no man to be submissive to. And so the only thing that's out there is for her to make money with this easy way, because these weak-ass fucking
I mean,
dudes.
one
Okay,
thing
all right,
I
hold on, hold-
one quick thing. One thing I really appreciate about what you're saying, Justin, is that you're saying men need to take responsibility.
Men
and
should take
accountability,
responsibility
which
for
I
it,
love.
which is not a new thing. It's always been this way. So
Agreed.
for us to flip it on the chicks now, I think is dumb.
Agree, but I would just argue that women are strong. We have agency. We can make decisions. I agree with some of the language coming out of this side of the table, that we make decisions, we make choices, and we should use that power for what end, right? It's not like men have all the power, women have no power of choice. Women have the power to decide the standards that we hold ourselves to and that we hold men to, and the kind of women we want to be, and the kind of role models we want to be for the next generation, right?
And the truth is that if we took porn away from young men,
Bird dog,
that they would
yes.
be incentivized to go become that strong man. I'm all for getting rid of porn.
So let's do
I'm
it,
all for
bro.
that.
I'm
Like,
scared if
do
we
it.
get rid
I
of
am
porn
about that
because-
Let's
completely.
do it.
I love that. And
I
everybody
love
in
all
our
this
and
shit.
everybody in this space, or a lot of people in this space, would naturally, easy decision, almost 100 out of 100 say get rid of porn. I'm all
So
about
how
it.
could we do that? Like, how could
That's
we
a
go
great
about
question.
doing that?
Well, that gets to like a governmental level now.
Yeah, I
doesn't
mean,
it?
we'd have to
It's
legislate it.
legislative.
Well,
yeah.
I think I think there's legislation that can be done to ban porn, because I think
But-
it is.
But
shouldn't be on
that
the
would go
market.
back to making the United States of America have its Christian backgrounds come and stand up to the point where people would go vote for it in that way.
But I think the other thing
Deus
too
Vult.
is it kind of takes a leap of faith as women, because if culture is demanding from us, right? I mean, that's what you guys we're dealing with. Culture is we're swimming in is sexually objectifying women,
Okay.
rewarding women
I
for
love to
sexual
be objectified.
objectification, right? And
Haram.
so, but I do think there's a role of personal responsibility that women, we're not doomed to anything. We can make any choice we want, and we can start over. We can walk a different path, and we can be the women that we dream to be. That isn't just making, you know, money on the internet one way. We can.
I am the woman I dream to be. I've arrived, and I'm so happy with her.
I
But-
think one of the biggest
Can I-
problems in society is that we've cheapened sex. That sex is just
I
something
agree.
that's thrown around. It's just like this commodity. It's literally sold. And I think sex is supposed to be something, it is something sacred and beautiful and amazing. And it's designed for two people who are just passionately in love and committed to each other publicly for life. And also sex can bring human beings into the world. And it does. And so that's the other thing that is not even really talked about a lot at this table, but sex can bring human beings into the world. So we should be having sex in relationships that are prepared to be
Can I say something?
Amen.
and that'll make a society so
Yeah,
much
say
healthier
something.
and happier.
Yeah, I suppose we
Chase,
could
what do
change
you
it to
think?
like how many people you've had sexual intercourse
But I'll
with,
say one more thing.
doesn't
I
really
think
roll
I
off
think
the
no
tongue.
matter how high anybody's body count is, there can be a start over point where you decide, I'm not going to keep living that way. I'm going to live a different way, and that change is possible. No, it's
I'm
true.
sorry, but once you've
And
slept with like 100 dudes, I don't care if you're a born again virgin.
There, I mean, Mary
it's
Magdalene
done.
is one of the greatest saints of all time, and she
And she was a
actually was the
hoe?
first
Was she a hoe?
first person. She was a hoe.
She was a hoe?
She was.
Has
and
not
she was
been
the
proven.
first.
I'm not
she was
familiar
the
with the
first
scripture.
person to
Jezebel?
see Jesus
I looked
after
into this
he was
like
resurrected.
like a week and a half ago. Has it actually been proven that she was like a prostitute?
Tradition says that there is a tradition that says yes, she was involved in prostitution.
That's fine, but I prefer a virgin over a born again virgin.
Are we talking about?
Especially
Just
if she
saying.
was a prostitute before.
Especially if she was a
And
prostitute.
that's understandable.
I thought
Brian.
Jezebel was the prostitute.
Can